welcome to today's live video, all about transitions and what it looks like to create a home away from home while you live abroad. I have been an expat and a traveler, like in a major way, for about 7 years now, almost 7 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. And I have been through my fair share of transitions, and we're going to talk a little bit about what those look like in today's video. Um, but first, I want to talk about what some of these transitions include or can, in fact, include. And we have the moving process to a country in general, especially if you're moving from one country to another. Y'all, it can be very daunting. Leaving family is also another transition, returning to family. And that's something that my husband and I tend to do quite frequently, especially, normal people, normal expats in particular. And we'll talk about why I'm saying normal because we are a little abnormal. But normal expats in particular, normal travelers, you leave home, you come back, and you go back to your routine. But for us, we tend to go back for a period of time, whether that's like a month, 2 months, sometimes 3 months. And then we end up going back abroad and like doing this whole like yo-yoing effect over and over again. And so that is its own type of transition. We'll talk about growing up in general, as well as being a transition and becoming a different person with changing values and beliefs. I started my expat life journey when I was, 26 or so. I'm now in my 30s, and I have grown up significantly from a 20-year-old person to now this woman who is married with a child, who has all these different thoughts and experiences and things like that. So that is a transition as well. This is an interesting one to mention. Food transitions. So, food transitions in regarding how different foods from different countries affect your body, and in particular, how water affects your body and bacteria affects your body. And I've talked about this in other videos as well about bacteria, and people think that that's a negative connotation, especially when you're talking about bacteria in different foods in different countries. It's not a bad thing. There are just different bacteria that are in different foods and different substances that you might not have in your own country. For example, if your country, you rely on fluoride in your water, and then you move abroad and a country doesn't, you adjust to those different things as well. So that is always interesting because I suffer with, like, this is probably TMI, but just unregulated life in that realm because yeah, food and water and stuff affects me quite severely in a lot of ways. Um, so let's get off this topic. Talking about transitions in becoming a wife. Like I said, I was in my 20s when I first started my expat life. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in upcoming points. Becoming a mother as well as a transition. So what does that look like from being what I still would say single in my singleness, even with a husband, us being in our singleness, and then having this child that you have to now, that is now relying on you for everything, and even in those traveling decisions that come up as well, how often you are traveling or not traveling, and what that actually looks like. So that is something as well. And then finally, adjusting to moving again. So if you've been following along, you will know that we are looking to move again next year. So I am at this point in my life, in this transition of living in Ecuador, where I think I'm figuring it out. I am figuring out what I like, what I don't like, who my friends are, who they're not, where I like to eat, what I don't like to eat, and all of these things. My routine, I feel like, is solid. I'm getting there. And it took me up until now to get there. And I'll say, gracefully speaking, because I was pregnant when I did arrive here, and went through that whole motherhood process, which again, we'll talk about in a later point. It has taken me a longer time to transition and to make Ecuador feel a lot more like home. Honestly, I could live here for probably another couple of years if it wasn't just for the work aspects and us having to leave. So I'm going to stop right there and just interject and say if you have any comments during this live stream, please leave them in the comment section, the comment box area, so we can have this be an open conversation. That's why I love doing lives, because I want to talk to you all. I find that this is a lot more fun, a lot more freeing sometimes than just creating this script and having it be so structured. So definitely interject. What have transitions look like for you? Even if you're not an expat, what kind of a transition are you currently going through, especially as we approach the new year? Are you looking to make some changes? Are you looking to transition? How can, with those transitions, how can you make them feel more comfortable so that you are more at home wherever you are, whether that is abroad, in your home country, in your own body? What does that look like? Hi, Milton. Milton says hi. Thank you so much for stopping by. I so appreciate you watching this live stream today. Okay, so let's get into the meat of it all. So I I talk about this topic here and there, but I also try to, I want to say this, I have tried to, over the years, kind of keep the things that I say, and I'm looking outside, there are like eagles. I tell you all about the view. Eagles, just like beautiful, just right in the horizon. Anyways, I try to be careful with what I say, because in a lot of ways, I know that my viewership here is not always going to relate to my lifestyle fully, um, because it is so unique. But moving forward, I would really like to just be more transparent in what our lifestyle does, in fact, look like as people who work for the US government and move abroad for the work, versus it just being I guess, a form of escapism. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think a lot of people want to move abroad because, you want to leave your home country, which is, part of the reason why we are also abroad. We wanted a different lifestyle than we had in our home country, the USA, but we are not looking to make expat life. And I say expat life because we move for the work, versus immigrating, because immigrating, I guess it's more permanent in a lot of ways. But we don't plan to live this lifestyle for the rest of our lives, and we don't plan to be in one country for the rest of our lives. It really just does depend on the work. And so it's not as traditional as other expats and digital nomads lifestyles, and probably how they would view things. Yeah, I just think that it's interesting because in terms of transitions, I would say that transitions tend to be a little bit harder, but it also depends on the person and the individual, because I think that for me, um, I manage transitions quite differently. I find that I transition quite difficultly, and whereas my husband, he does not, from what he has said, he does not. Um, Fall into the same patterns of transition that I do, even though he does deal with transitions, which we'll talk about in later points. So I just wanted to put that out there, kind of as a clarity point as to why this topic is something I really wanted to talk about. And again, if you have any comments, let this be an open dialogue about what I'm talking about. My way is not just the only way of looking at things, especially when it comes to life abroad. But yeah, let's talk about what transitions have looked like for me for each country that I've lived in. So those of you tuning in probably know me mostly for living here in Ecuador, because that is what my current content is all about. But I have lived in Morocco, I've lived in India, I've also lived in Washington, D.C. I am not originally from Washington, D.C., I am originally from Colorado. So even moving from Colorado to Washington, D.C., from abroad back to D.C. is like, okay, this is cool. I love D.C., but it's technically not my home, if that makes sense. So it's like a lot goes on in my mind, in this whole like sphere of things when it comes to what we're doing. So let's start talking about Morocco first and foremost. So when I moved to Morocco, I was newly married. I had never traveled outside of the US. let alone I had never moved out of Colorado, like I just mentioned. And so then we also joined an organization. And if you guys are not familiar, we have a couple of videos on my channel. We're with the State Department. And this video is in no way, shape, or form the views of the US government or anything like that. These are just solely my views, my opinions, and things like that. So I just want to get that out of the way. But yeah, so joining a new organization on top of moving abroad, on top of getting married, I mean, you can just imagine. And then I am what people have called an empathetic person. So I just feel everything. I feel a lot. I am an emotional person as well. So all of that wrapped into this whole conversation, you can just see how hard things could have been, may have been. Anyways, we're transitioning, right? So I was also homesick and I had extreme culture shock. And it's not even the extreme culture shock of like Morocco as its own culture. It was more of the extreme culture shock of, for me, living in Colorado, living in a quiet neighborhood for the most part, to then moving to probably the busiest place in Casablanca. That's where we live, Casablanca, Morocco, one of the busiest neighborhood streets, intersections. So it was just loud. And I think that was probably the majority of that culture shock, just noise, pollution in my brain. So, anyways, what did I learn though? Because I think that it's important for me not to just like dump everything all on you all, especially because I want you to get something out of my experiences and then be able to take some of my learning lessons to your experiences as well. So what did I learn? I learned that there's always an adjustment process, big or small. Okay. And I didn't know this until I left. And for me, what I'm realizing for this adjustment process, that it takes me, personally, 6 months to fully adjust, around 6 months, give or take, to fully adjust. And that includes, like getting into the country, getting to where we're living. In Morocco, I had a job. So getting settled with my job, I was teaching English. I was teaching English to adults. The adults I taught English to mostly spoke French and Arabic. And so even like finding the lay of the land with that, I learned French before I moved to Morocco, and that was helpful too. So that adjustment process also comes into play too when you're learning how to use that language, and how to communicate with people as well. So you have to take all of those things into account into that adjustment process as well. I would say that, and I've said this before in other videos, and in this book that I also wrote, all about jobs and opportunities and my experiences with my professional life abroad. But when it comes down to it, I think you have to have some sort of plan or purpose when you move abroad. I mean, I'm not the one. I mean, I'm telling y'all about my personality and all that stuff, but I'm not the one who can just move somewhere and then figure it out. And we'll talk about that with my India experience because, ooh, y'all. But I do believe that having a purpose, having a plan, having something, even a sliver of something, will help you figure things out. It'll force you to figure things out when life is not going right, if that makes sense. So if you fall into depression or homesickness or culture shock, but you still have to go to work, then you're going to put your clothes on, get yourself up, and go to work. And that is what happened with me. If I did not have a job before moving abroad, I applied for the job, got the job, interviewed for it and everything in DC, and then moved to Morocco and started. I think I actually called in the first day. I was like, I'm adjusting. Please let me adjust for a day. And my boss was like, all right, we need to see you the next day. And if it wasn't for even him saying that and me just like staying in the house, like just culturally shocked and all the noise and everything, I don't think I would have flourished as well as I did, as fast as I did. And also, when you move abroad, you want to look at it as a time that is once in a lifetime, if that makes sense. And I think, again, going back to the traditional expat and digital nomad um, mindset, you already are looking at it as that because you're so excited. This is something you decided for yourself. You're going to have a fresh, clean start. Whereas for us, yes, those things are sort of true, but with the work, with my husband's work, um, we're kind of carrying a little bit of our previous selves to each place as well. So it's not as fresh of a start, um, if that makes sense. But it's a reminder to all different types of people living abroad that it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, whether you're staying for 6 months or 4 years, or you're immigrating for a longer period of time. Look at it like that. And then also know that the transition and time abroad can be hard, and that is okay. I wish somebody would have told me that. I just felt so ungrateful, right? Because yes, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, but am I not allowed to mourn my past life, or try to be figuring things out as I go? Am I just supposed to have it all figured out at this moment? No, you're not supposed to, and neither was I, neither am I, as I transition to the next place in the future as well. Like, this is a reminder for myself as well. You didn't do anything wrong. You're not experiencing this lifestyle incorrectly if you're not happy all the time, because it is hard. Life abroad can be hard, but it can also be one of the most beautiful experiences that you will ever have. You just have to have a mindset that is different from it needing to be perfect, if that makes sense. So, Alexandria, hello. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so happy to have you on today's live stream. I just love doing these, y'all. Like, this is fun to me. Okay, so let's talk about India, and let me know in the comments which country you all started following me from. Again, I think most of you probably started following me in this Ecuador phase of life, but a lot of people are started following me when I moved to Morocco, which is actually how I started this, like, evolution of my channel, because I used to just do like hair, like my channel used to just be all about natural hair and beauty and stuff. But I moved to Morocco, and I was like, I need an outlet. I need to talk about what I'm seeing and what I'm doing and experiencing and eating and all of that stuff. So I was like, forget about the beauty. Let's do the travel and the life abroad stuff. So now I'm here. Okay, so Milton said you are here in Quito. Awesome. We're going to talk about Ecuador. Just let me get through. Yes, yes. I don't know. I'm a little behind on comments, by the way. So Milton said he's in Quito and asked me if I'm in Quito. Yes, I'm in Quito. I am a little behind on comments, so please bear with me on that. I think maybe you asked me that in a comment, and yes, I'm in Quito. Anyways, thank you for your question. So let's talk about India. So we moved to India, and I'm going to be very transparent with you all. Marriage was a little hard. I felt like I was going through so much, and I ended up like blaming and taking out a lot of how I felt on my husband, like my experiences, if that made sense. Like, okay, I'm homesick, but you're here, so because it's just you and I'm just gonna bounce my frustration off of you. And so I felt like that made things a little bit hard, especially in that adjustment period, because when you move abroad with your partner, you're like, you all want to just be like blissfully happy and like, let's experience all the new things together, and how cute is it, and all the things. But that is more I think when you're traveling, because when you are moving abroad with your spouse, you have to figure things out. There are logistics that are coming into play, and we'll talk about this with the Morocco stuff too. Your spouse, you're starting new jobs, and like, you're trying to individually transition and figure things out, and then come together and try to figure that out as well. And if you just move to a new country and it's just the two of you, and you have not met anybody else yet, or not really comfortable maybe with your colleagues or whomever that you have met, then it's really like you're just bouncing frustrations off of each other. And so that's what I felt a lot of at the beginning. I know that he felt a lot of that at the beginning too, but just know like it takes challenge, or there are challenges within each little adjustment area. For me, when I moved to India, I did not have a job or a plan when I first moved abroad. That is why I am like, okay, I had that in Morocco. That worked really well for me. I didn't have that in India, and that did not work well for me. So that is why I really strongly encourage you all to like find your jobs, find your opportunities. If even if you're just volunteering, whatever that looks like, find it out, figure it out before you move abroad if you can. I mean, it's not always possible. It was not possible for me with India. I tried, but there wasn't anything available when I was looking before the actual transition. So, long story short, I did end up finding something about 6 months. Like I told you, 6 months. So 6 months or so later, I did find something that was very fulfilling and very rewarding, but it did take some time. I did struggle with friendships, especially with Americans, with my expat community folks. It just like you don't always gel with everybody. You really don't. And I think what ended up happening with me is similar to me like taking my frustrations out on my husband. It was like, okay, taking my frustrations out on the other Americans within just not even where we work, but just the broader expat community, thinking to myself like, okay, we're all in this together, we should all be friends. And that doesn't always happen either. Not everybody is going to be your friend. Okay, and that's okay. Like you have to start to be comfortable with who you are, so that in situations like this you're not looking for outside what is the word, not acknowledgement, validation, that's it, like validation from other people within whatever community you find yourself a part of. You have to know who you are and your own values, and that you're enough and all the things. And because friendships, especially when you are moving from country to country, they can be very fleeting. And yeah, you just have to know that going in, because it can suck. You can get your feelings hurt, but it is what it is. And yeah, knowing yourself, learning yourself is very important. So with India, you all can imagine with India, like looking at a map. I'm looking at my map here. The proximity of India and just all of that was just far from home. And so for me, I felt like home felt just so much farther away, um, both physically and mentally. I think during this time, I started to really like think to myself, do I have a home? Where is my home? If my home is not um, here in India, which it ended up feeling like home. Again, after a certain period of time, you just are like, yes, this is my home. I love this place. But yeah, with India, I was just like, okay, like I just don't feel like I have a home base. I remember talking to my mom. I remember, and mom, if you're on this live, hello. I remember telling her like, I don't think I have a home. Like your home is not my home. They had just moved to a new place as well. So I was just like, it's not my family home. I was just feeling a lot of weird feelings about home and this separation, this physical and mental separation that I was having. So, anyways, I could talk about that maybe in another video if you want. Um, yes, so Milton says, always welcome to you and your husband and baby. Thank you so much. We do like it here, honestly. And we'll talk about like the struggles that I had before coming to this point of like really liking it and wanting to stay. But yeah, thank you so much. And B.P says, wondering if it would be harder when single heading to Ecuador next month. I don't know. I would say for you, getting into, and I don't know if we've already discussed this, but getting into expat Facebook groups. Quito expats is a good one. There's Ecuador expats as well. If you identify as a Black American, there's African Americans in Ecuador. I think getting into these groups is so helpful. Or just like looking at hashtags and different things, and finding people, finding your community of people online, and then meeting them in person. Of course, if the safety and all of that stuff is copacetic, like figure that out. But that's a good way if you are single, I feel like, to kind of bridge that gap and make things a little more smooth. Um, and not that I'm not projecting this on you, but if you are a person that you know could be lonely or tends to like fall on the scale of more loneliness, then doing that would be very helpful. I do, and I'm married and I have a child, but I find myself like, have found myself, I would say, just saying to myself, like, oh, I feel kind of lonely and I wish I knew more people. Um, but in that, and I hope to like figure this out within the next couple of weeks, but I'm realizing that sometimes it's harder to expect for friendships and relationships to just come to you. Maybe that's something that you create for yourself. And I wish I knew that with the other places that we lived in, because I was, yeah, like I said, I felt lonely, just wishing that people would gravitate toward me to me. But it's like, no, I can do the work to get other people, into community as well, to start to create what I need, if that makes sense. And because other people might need exactly what you need. Anyways, I'm rambling. Let's move on to what I learned from my time in India. So, going back to that adjustment process, that adjustment period, I realized that it's true for every move. I thought it was only supposed to happen once. I thought, like, okay, Morocco, I adjusted, like, okay, it was hard, like, you know, I felt like I figured it out. And then I moved to India and I like literally, y'all, the first maybe week, I wish I was in it. I loved it. I felt like there is no transition period. I've got this down packed. Like it was very difficult. I mean, after about that week, it all just kind of settled in and it all just hit me. And I was like, this is going to be hard. And I was not thinking as positively as I should have, because I was like, this is going to be hard. And I wonder if I could do this. And obviously, I'm on the other side. Yes, I was able to do it. Yes, you're going to be able to do it too. It just takes time. And so, if you are, again, like me, like my family, and you move to multiple places throughout your expat life experience, just know it might take you some time to adjust, and that adjustment period might be different for everybody. Different timing, different things might happen. You just have to know that. And you also have to know that you want to give yourself grace. Please, please give yourself grace. I wish I was more gracious with myself. I was so hard on myself, making myself feel like I had to have it all together, especially when things were tough. Um, but you don't. You will eventually figure things out, especially if you give yourself grace and time. Like grace and time together is a beautiful recipe for a beautiful life abroad, because you will just realize, like, okay, this isn't working, but I have time. I'm here for X amount of time and I don't have to have it all figured out immediately. So that's really important to know. Um, Also know that not everyone is for you, and that you can't let people, you can't listen to people and let them dim your light. Like that includes family, that includes friends back home, that includes people you meet abroad. If you tell somebody, like for example, hey, I do YouTube, and somebody says, you can't do YouTube, you can't get paid doing it, you can't make a living doing it. That was a lot of what that is a lot of what I do living abroad. That is how I'm able to make an income, especially being a stay-at-home mom. But when you have somebody telling you that you can't do that, or whatever it is, whatever you are passionate about, or trying to do to just fuel your life, and somebody tells you that you can't, do not listen to them. You know what you're doing, and what you're doing is right for you. Don't let people dim your light. It's terrible, and they're just not worth it. And even in that, what I realized is that it's okay to do things on your own. Like I think India was the country that I realized I can solo travel. I mean, I solo traveled for work a lot before I moved abroad, and it was fantastic. It was actually one of the highlights of my 20s, just being able to travel for work. But when I moved to India, I went to Malaysia. I was here and there. I enjoyed myself, y'all. And I want you to do that too. Just take your life into your own hands and travel into your own hands. You don't need people to do things with. It might be fun, but you are fun all by yourself. And then lastly, creating routines is key. That is actually, well, that is India is where I started my morning routines, my nighttime routines. Like I needed my routines because I just felt so out of whack all the time. I just felt like I could not get my stuff together. And then when I started my morning routine, y'all, mm, so amazing. Like I just felt balanced, a lot more balanced, and yeah, it was great. Okay, so BP says you went to Otavalo a couple times. Yes, I did. All we see are markets. Are expats there? Did you go to Korakachi? Yarbos complained about people down the cold. Okay, so that's things to unpack, and it's perfect timing because we're about to talk about Ecuador, and I had somebody here helping me fix stuff. I think he might have just left, so bye. Okay, so let's see. So yeah, I went to Otavalo. I actually have not been to the markets. My husband has been to Otavalo a handful more times than just the two times that we've shown on my channel, and he has been to the markets. He likes the markets. He's not even a shopper like that. I love a good market. We just have not been able to stop at the market in Otavalo, but I've heard so many good things. People definitely like from Quito, they will make the trip to the Otavalo markets, even if they're not staying in Otavalo. But I do highly recommend that you stay at a hacienda out there. Like I mentioned, I've showed our two trips there. There are so many other places to stay and things to do. And then, yeah, Cotocachi, I believe that is nearby. And we have not gone there yet either. I was actually just talking to my friend, and I want to mention my friend Tony. He is I don't know what you call him. He's not a travel agent, or maybe he is a travel agent. Anyways, he's very good at what he does. That's all I'll say. And he puts together trips, so he can put together trips for you, different things like that. If you're interested, just let me know. Send me an email, and I'll give you his email. I'll ask him permission, and then, anyways, yes, I'll give you the hookup with that. But yeah, with him, we were actually looking to plan a trip to Cotacachi because I had mentioned to him my love for Otavalo, and he was like, "Well, why not just go to Cotacachi? It's like not too far away." So maybe that's a trip that we'll make in the future. I don't know if there are well, okay, expats are living all throughout Ecuador in from what I know, from what I've seen. But I don't know like what the expat community looks like there in either Otavalo or Cotacachi. I just know that a lot of expats live here in Quito. A lot of expats live at Manta. A lot of expats also live in Cuenca. But again, expats are all over the place. This is a very popular country for expats. People really do enjoy it here. And then, yeah, so I like how you say the Yarboros complained about Quito, because I get that I complain about Quito's damp and cold days. What's funny is lately, so you all tell me if this is true, give me the facts. But from what I've learned and what I've been told, we are currently in the season of El Nino. So I guess on the coast, it is. Is it rainier in the coast? I'm not on the coast. I'm in the mountain area. But I guess on the coast, they're experiencing El Nino, which then means we are experiencing the effects of that weather pattern here, and it has been hot. So, long story short, it has been hot for I don't know. I would say like 2 months. It's been like super hot until about a week ago or so, when it just started pouring rain. So we have had rain almost every single day here in Quito. I'm surprised it's not raining now. And I mean, the clouds look like it's like split, like sunny and then ominous. Like it's about to pour down later today, it feels like. But that doesn't stop us from still going for our daily walks and different things like that. It does suck to drive in, of course. But yeah, I would say, I always say this, if you're coming to Quito, planning on moving here even, make sure that you pack layers, wear layers, have things to layer. I believe our home is like concrete, like the walls, they're not insulated like you would find in the US. And so it can be very cold. And then it can be very hot too. Like, again, this window here, when it's sunny, the sun is just beaming down and it is just boiling hot. So it's like you have those extremes. And so it's really important for you to prepare in a way for layers. If you're moving here, I recommend like your blankets and rugs and different things like that. You see, we have like blankets. I'm sitting on the rugs. We have a blanket here. I mean, there's one over there. Like we don't like being cold. We don't like being cold. But I would say I actually love the weather here. Locals call it the eternal spring, and I would agree. Besides when it gets super hot, of course, when we have the extremes, but the extremes aren't as frequent as just the perfect eternal spring weather. It is beautiful. Honestly, I can't wait to go outside. My baby is sleeping now. We'll probably have lunch after this and then go outside and just hang out until we can't hang out anymore because it's just absolutely beautiful here. You also said rain is good for farmers and agriculture. Heck yes, I agree. I just, like I said, I just love it. I love it. It's so funny, the change. Again, this going back to the transition. When I first moved here, I did complain, and people were very upset in that video. I think the video is titled like "What I Wish I Knew Before Moving to Ecuador." Not everybody liked what I had to say because it was very weather focused. And I don't think I said I didn't like the weather here when I first moved here. It was just a surprise. I wish I knew. Of course, you can research, use me as your research if you need to. But I just didn't know the level, especially coming from Colorado and for that weather being cold. And then coming here and for this to feel cold, but it's not like cold, if that makes sense. Like it's just pack your layers. That's all I have to say. The Clarence says, is there a weather advisory for the extreme temperatures? Not that I know of. I haven't seen any weather temperatures, and I'll say that's because even when it's like very hot, you still feel like you'll get a couple of seasons within one day. So it might be very, very hot in the morning and then taper off into that eternal spring in the afternoon and then get very chilly in the evening. But people here are very used to it. I'm now very used to it. So I definitely don't complain anymore. It's just cool. It's just nice. But thank you so much, everybody, for your comments and your questions. Feel free to keep them coming as we dive into Ecuador and creating a home away from home while living abroad, the transitions, all of that fun stuff. So when I moved to Ecuador, I was pregnant, as I've mentioned. So I was, how pregnant was I? Like 3 or 4 months pregnant. And then, obviously continuing to grow throughout that whole time. But during that time, I experienced prenatal depression and then the seasonal depression because of the weather. I think it was just a lot of hormonal stuff, honestly, at the time. And even though I love the weather here, sometimes when it is dark and gloomy, my mood is dark and gloomy. So, that is something that happens. Let's just talk about, the transparency of it all. Marriage again, it was hard again. And so what my husband and I have realized is, okay, like we are transitioning. And when we are transitioning, we might not be the nicest to each other, especially when we're transitioning and then pregnant and then all, it's just like layers on top of layers on top of layers. And so, yeah, you have to just realize like with all of the different layers and starting a new job and moving to a new home, a new country, new expectations, changing expectations, all the things, y'all, it's just a lot. And so giving grace to not only yourself, but to all of those people coming with you, your spouse, your children, it is so important. Please be gracious to everybody because even if, like my personality is I'm one to express everything. Obviously I have a YouTube channel and I'm just sharing everything, even on a live stream, right? So even if, you have a person like me in a relationship and then somebody else who's like my husband, who maybe is a little bit more, he doesn't express himself as much, you have to realize that that doesn't mean that that person doesn't have something going on, or that they're not having a time, maybe not a hard time or a difficult time, but just a time of transition. And even thinking about your children as well, they're having a time of transitioning. We're gonna, experience that maybe in the next couple of places we live in, as our son is, you know, the age of speaking and forming opinions. I mean, he has opinions now, but you know what I mean, being in school and all the things and friendships and all that, like, everybody is transitioning. And I had to realize now, after all these different countries, I didn't even talk about the transition from the US to from India to the US, from the US to here. Anyways, that could be its own video. But yeah, everybody transitions in their own way, so you have to be gracious to everyone. Um, what I also realized living here in Ecuador is that friendships have become a lot harder. I think it could also be language barrier for me too. I've got my Spanish book over there. I'm trying. I work hard. I do my thing when it comes to Spanish, but that doesn't mean that it's not hard. And so making friends, finding the time to do so with my lifestyle as well, being a mom and all the things, finding time, it is harder. And so yeah, I have found that friendships here are harder. That's why I had the whole spiel all about friendships and things earlier. But yeah, so excuse me, y'all. This is live. I probably need some water. So yeah, I think that too with friendships, I can attribute them being harder also due to the isolation that I have felt here. And I don't know if I've talked about this on a YouTube video before, but I mentioned this in conversations. So I have felt very isolated here, living in Ecuador. And it really has nothing to do with Ecuador. It actually has a lot to do with my physical location, the physical isolation that I feel. I always mention our view. So with a beautiful view comes a location that is probably pretty high up, right? You would imagine. So yeah, we're pretty high up. And so with that, it's kind of like you think about like a mountain, like we're at the top of this mountain in a way, and everything else is like down. So it takes a while to get to places, to friends. And so friendships are hard because of that physical isolation that I'm also experiencing too. And then what else? So something else that I've experienced is that our actual move. I know that some of you are probably wondering about like the actual physicalness of the move, like movers and things. So I'll talk about it in two parts. So we moved here from Washington, D.C., and we had our movers, they like packed up our stuff. They didn't do a great job, honestly. It was probably one of the first times probably the start of just bad experiences with movers, because in Morocco and India, fantastic experiences. I even have videos about our moving experiences because they take care of your stuff. Abroad, people take care of your stuff, y'all. Like people are very good at what they do. They care about the jobs. Not that people in the US don't, but it's just from our experiences. I mean, stuff was just broken. Things were just moldy. Like, I mean, I just have never experienced anything like that. So the actual move abroad was annoying. And then we went back home. I went back home, and then my husband joined later on. But I went back home to give birth to our son, and then we, had a baby shower. We got a bunch of gifts and things like that. So we did what is called a layette shipping. And even with that layette shipping, things were missing. Things weren't packed great. The experience also with that was its own transition. Can you imagine, going back home, giving birth, coming back with a newborn? I think he was like 3 months or so. Yeah, I mean, if you want a whole video about that, let me know, because it's just a lot. But that was even its own experience. So yeah, what did I learn from that? Let me look really quickly. Let's see. I've got some comments here. Did you buy rugs in Ecuador? Yes. Can you buy down comforters? Yeah, I think so. I think you can buy down comforters and pillows. Yeah, you should be able to. They've got some amazing home stores here. I'm obsessed. Total Hogar is a good one. There are a couple of home stores in the mall as well. I mean, all the malls here are fun. But I like Total Hogar because at least the one that's not too far from me, you don't actually have to go into the mall. So if you don't want to deal with all of the crowds and the hoopla of a mall, then there are standalone stores that you can get things like that from too. And Total Hardware also has rugs. So a couple of the rugs in our home, if you want to check out what our home looks like, I've got a home tour video of our home here in Ecuador on my channel. You can see some of that stuff too. So definitely check out that video. Okay, so let's talk about what I learned from my transition living here in Ecuador. Again, giving your spouse and your children grace, allow them to transition too. It's not just about you. um, Also, therapy is key. I started therapy here in Ecuador, and y'all have heard the long story now about my life abroad, this almost 7 years abroad. And you would think that I was in therapy before now, but no, I started therapy, I would say maybe a year and a half ago. I'm kind of transitioning even in that with my own therapist, trying to figure out like what I want to do with that. But I'm not writing it off. I really believe that therapy is key, that it's helpful, of course, if it's something you can afford and things like that too. You also want to really learn or lean into your hobbies. Whether or not your hobbies are like mine, I mean, my hobbies are pretty intense. Like I'm on YouTube and running a whole business while being a stay-at-home mom and being a wife and all the things. So my hobby is technically also my job. So I'm looking to lean into hobbies that don't include monetizing what I do in a way, or just being on all the time. I do like playing video games and being outside and hikes and all those things. So I'm looking to do more of those things and being really intentional with those things too, so that I can manage my stress a little bit better. You also want to find things aside from work to fuel your passions. Um, so just like I just mentioned, I'm sorry, my baby, I just heard him. I'm like, are you awake already? Have I been talking for this long? 48 minutes, y'all? This is good. Let me breeze through the rest of these so I can get my baby. You also want to find ways to connect with loved ones. I think that I've been doing a good job of that. I make sure to talk to my mom almost every day. I check in with cousins and siblings as often as I can. We recently recently, last year around this time, did a family cabin trip. Y'all, so much fun. I'm realizing that like my time at home, instead of it being like another form of transition, like why not just make it fun? Why not include people in the things that I want to do? So family cabin trips are always fun. I want to do some like big family trips abroad sometime too. Group trips. Sorry, just as a caveat, if you're interested in a group trip here to Ecuador, please let me know by filling out the form that is I'll put it in the description box of this video. I think we'll just do like another week of inquiring to see if people want to do it. And if not, we won't do it, but that's okay too, because I'll just find other fun ways to interact and hang out with you all. But yeah, definitely look for that form. It's in my community tab as well if you just want to hop over there and check it out. But going back to my points, I have a couple left. Plan ahead. Yeah, so plan ahead for fun activities and adventures. So whether that's like when you go back home to see family, or if that's like with your unit wherever you're living, planning ahead is really great because it makes you make sure that you're being really intentional with your time and not finding yourself in a rut. Because yes, you can live abroad, it can be fantastic, but what ends up happening if you're not really intentional with your time abroad will also look like your time at home, which is full of work, being stressed, all the things, if you're not really intentional about making things different and better for yourself, because that's the purpose of this lifestyle. You want to do things differently, right? So the parent asked, what kind of video games do I play? Oh, we just started Alan Wake. Amazing. We just finished Spider-Man, but I'm a Sims girly through and through, Sims 4. I just wish I had more time. Honestly, I want to cry every time I think about um, me not being able to play The Sims 4, but I'll just tell you this really quick story. I stopped when The Sims 4 added toddlers to the game because my child was becoming a toddler. And I was like, I'm not about to be on this game playing playing with toddlers when I'm having trouble managing my own toddler, y'all. I'm like, it's just too real. Sims is like a simulation game, and I was like, it's just too real. So now that we're finally finding our groove with toddlerhood, I'm like, maybe I can jump back in. Maybe that would be fun. Um, how often do you go to the U.S., Colorado? Often, actually. We were just in Miami not too long ago. So not Colorado, but yeah, U.S. We were just in Miami in October, and then we were in Colorado in June. I would say I try to average maybe like 4 to 6 months. We're currently looking at when we want to travel back to Colorado coming up. I wish I could go back in January for my mom's birthday, but we're not going to be able to make that trip, but we are looking at coming. So, Mom, if you're watching this, we are looking at coming sooner than later because we miss you. So, yeah, we definitely try to make it a habit of going back as often as we can. I actually say that I live in both places because when we go back to Colorado, I do stay for a significant amount of time, and I'm able to work there as well. So in a lot of ways, it's like we have two homes. Now that I am identifying it as a home, yes, I technically have two homes, which I love. Okay, so like I said, I am hearing my baby stirring. So I'm going to leave it at that. Please let me know if you have any more questions. Let me answer this one really quickly. Was Miami a shopping supplies trip? No. Oh my gosh, it should have been. I didn't have enough time. I went for a conference and met some amazing people, a travel conference actually, and met a lot of amazing people. But I did intend to like get my computer checked out and buy a bunch of stuff because we're having issues with y'all see your girls got braids now, and it's not because they look real cute. I mean, they do look cute, but braids help with me conserving product because my son is now, his hair is getting so long that he is using my products as well. And I'm like, I'm not finding what I need here. So we need to save on products. So this is helpful. But yeah, going back home allows me to kind of like do like a replenishment type of thing with certain products and liquids especially too. So that's always important. But thank you so much everybody for your comments and for tuning in for today's live stream. Would you like to see a live weekly? Because I like this. And if weekly, would you like to see a live around this time or preferred in the evening? Leave a comment below after this whole thing gets published. And I will go back to this video and like check out your comments and your answers. But yeah, so I also want to say some of the things I mentioned today are in my free resource that I will also link below after this whole thing processes and goes live. The resource is all about 30 jobs and opportunities you can get to fuel your life abroad. Like I said, I believe in having opportunities and things like that to make sure that you're living your best life abroad. You have some funds. So I will link that below as well as my ebook. I'll link that too because that's an important one. It talks a little bit about my story and my life abroad as well as employment. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all in the next one. Bye.